If you don't believe in God, you're going to hell. Only God doesn't want you to believe in him. Except that God does want you to believe in him. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. Let's do this. So how many of you out there remember Veritas 48? Well, whether you do or don't, Theoretical Bullshit got hold of one of his older videos, and he claims that Veritas has somehow changed his position, but he doesn't say how. Regardless, the point Veritas makes in this old video is one that bugs the shit out of me and desperately needs addressing. So let's do this.
The truth is, we have no way of knowing that in a world in which God's existence is strikingly obvious to everybody on earth, that this would lead to a relationship with God in the way expressed by the Gospels and the Epistles. In fact, such overtness could very well be detrimental to this end. It could very well be the case that the sort of blatant appearance of God that's being asked of him could create resentment, either over time or even initially, by large groups of people, which would in effect be deleterious to filial knowledge of God.
So for those of you who don't know, and I kind of had to look it up even though it should have been obvious given the word used, filial knowledge of God is treating God like a parent figure, treating God like daddy, having respect for God as a parent. And I can sort of see what Veritas is trying to say here, that if God just showed up and said, "Here I am, worship me like a dad," we might resent that just a smidge. I can see how that might be, sure. But here's the problem. What are we told repeatedly will happen to us if we don't believe in God? What do the religious say if we don't have this kind of respect? Well, we'll go to hell. We'll be tortured forever. You want to know how to get someone to resent you? You start telling them, "I'll punish you if you don't do what I say." That is the best way to spark rebellion. If this God really wanted this kind of filial knowledge, he chose the wrongest possible way to go about it, with threats. If you really want us to respect you and to treat you as a parent figure, start being benevolent. If you're all-powerful, hey, make our lives easier, make our lives better, do us favors. And we might start to go, hey, this guy cares about us, this guy wants the best for us. Maybe we should have some respect for him, because, he's not being an asshole, he's treating us well, hey, but that's not what happens. You look at this world is not the best place. Let's face it. Disease, war, famine, all of that crap, yeah, it ain't good, So, maybe if we really are supposed to treat God like some sort of father figure, he could have gone about it a different way than hiding himself and giving us a book loaded with threats about what will happen to us if we don't do what we're told. Just saying.
Now, I want you to notice with this argument that all any theist would have to do to defeat Scott's argument is find a single possible explanation as to why God would allow for non-belief and remain hidden, even when the potential threat of hell and our eternal security are at stake, right?
But that's just it, isn't it? This choice is nothing like free. There is no free will involved here. We already know about the punishment and reward setup. Think about it for a moment. What are we told repeatedly by your holy book, by your holy leaders? Well, maybe there's a few exceptions out there, but let's face it, the vast, vast majority of Christianity tells us that we are going to hell for nonconformity. That if we don't believe in God, if we don't have this filial relationship, we are in fact going to hell. We are told this flat out. But apparently your God has decided that we have to freely choose to have this relationship with him. And so he hides himself to make sure that it's not enforced on us by showing that he's real. That we have to come to this relationship, that we have to come to this belief freely. But how free is it when we're already told that if we don't do it, we are going to hell, that we are going to be punished? That's not a free choice by any stretch. That's, do it or I'll fucking spank you is what that is. What that is right there is, well, here's what will happen to you if you don't do what I tell you to do. But you don't have to do what I tell you to do. No, not really. I'm giving you a free choice. Come on, think about it. This is carrot and stick time. This is not a free choice by any stretch of the imagination. You can dress it up however you like. But we are basically told we will be tortured forever if we don't conform.
And it could very well be the case that if God made his existence completely apparent to everybody, this would in effect take away our freedom to make morally significant decisions. And this argument has been presented by Michael Murray at Franklin and Marshall College. There's a link to the PDF of this paper in the description of this video. Dr. Murray argues that if God revealed himself in a way that Scott demands, for example, it takes away our freedom to make morally significant decisions.
So we're on morals now? Okay, fine. That's great. If we aren't good people, then we get to go to hell. If we are good people, we get to go to heaven. Punishment reward for being good people. That I get. That makes perfect sense. But what we're also told is that belief is also part and parcel of whether or not we get to go to heaven or hell. What we are told is that having that filial relationship you talk about is necessary to get the reward, that not having it gets us punishment. And that, to me, just sounds like narcissism. That sounds like God going, oh, my children don't worship me, my children don't love me. Well, then I'm going to punish every last one of the ones that don't. See, that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. That's the part I object to. That belief is necessary. Why can't we just be good people and have God go, well, I hid myself and they don't believe in me, who'da thunk it, and not make that part of the punishment reward system? Why can't that happen? Huh? It just makes me glad that none of this seems to be true. That God hiding himself could also be God not existing. And it sure seems to me like God doesn't exist. That this punishment and reward system only exists when humans create it in the form of prisons and such. That's the part that I'm glad about. Just saying.
See, if God made himself completely apparent to everybody in the way Scott is demanding, especially given his message of judgment, people would subsequently respond to him out of self-preservation, which is not what God wants in Christian theology. God wants our response to be made out of complete interest in him.
Like I said, narcissism. That's me. God's a fucking drama queen, dude.
And so God in turn lowers the dial, the apprehension of the threat of judgment. And this gives us the choice to respond freely and make the morally significant choice of responding to his self-revelation in an appropriate way. And so exists a possible reason that God remains hidden and allows for the possibility of non-belief.
But allow me to reiterate what I said before. We are already told that belief in God is required for the whole punishment reward system. That to get the reward, we have to believe in God. So allowing for the possibility of non-belief and not forcing us to believe out of self-preservation is bullshit. It's already built into the theology. I'm sorry, but this entire argument falls apart right at its face.
Now let me underscore something. This argument need not be the most persuasive thing you've ever heard. The moment a single possible reason for why God remains hidden and allows for non-belief is presented, the moment that happens, Scott's argument is defeated because his argument requires that God have no possible reason to allow for non-belief. But we've just seen one possible and plausible reason for why God allows for non-belief and remains hidden even with our eternal security at stake.
While it's true we've just been given a reason, we haven't been given a good one, we haven't been given a logical one, and we haven't been given a reasonable one. So no, I'm sorry, but this just doesn't work. I mean, okay, I get it, right? I get what you're trying to say. It just doesn't make logical, reasonable sense. And if your God is supposed to be all-knowing and all-loving and all-powerful, you'd think he could do better than this. Just saying.
For example, he asserts, quote, "We see the world through God goggles, and even though we don't see God, hear God, or interact with God in any way, we interpret our observations to fit our assumptions that God exists." End quote. Now, to be fair, he does in fact go into why he thinks we wear God goggles, but the real assertion here is in the latter part of this, where he says that we don't see, hear, or interact with God in any way. We just misinterpret things based on our assumption of God's existence.
Well, isn't it amazing how rarely skeptics seem to be presented with objective, empirical data that we can show to other people the way we can with pretty much anything else that we assert? No, it's only the believers who are willing to go on faith that seem to have these experiences, and they don't have them in ways that they can show to other people that we can experiment on so we can verify God's existence. No. That to me is just, I'm sorry, I realize you say that God hides himself for a reason. I get that. But still, the fact that we've never been able to show this to other people, that we've never been able to show people this kind of data ever, suggests to me that God doesn't exist, that we have no reason to assume that he does, that the people who claim experiences of God are full of crap. Because honestly, I may be a skeptic, I may be someone who doesn't believe, but I'm an actual skeptic, not a naysayer. If you were to show me data, I would change my mind. Now, I realize you have reasons why you say God doesn't give me the kind of data I would need in order to change my mind. I get that. And I've said in many of my videos exactly what you've said, actually, that if God did exist, chances are I'd hate the fucker. But honestly, that doesn't mean that I would not have the kind of morals that your God wants. And you'd think that would be enough. You'd think your God would have the compassion enough to say, well, gee, okay, here's someone who doesn't believe I exist, but for reasonable reasons, for logical reasons, for good reasons. And I did hide myself, so it's kind of partly my fault. You'd think that your God would be good enough for that, but no. Apparently, the reward system says if I don't believe against logic, against reason, then I will be punished. Now, come on. Of course I'm going to hate that kind of a God. And of course I'm not going to believe in that kind of God too, because this God denies me the evidence I would need to believe in him. Your God does everything wrong. If he wanted me to be on his side, everything. Think about that. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Seriously. Instead, please think, because that's the right thing to do. Please take the time to rate this video. And hey, if you dig what I do, subscribe. And please visit my Zazzle store, where you'll find all kinds of BionicDance merchandise. Vote me down, and I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.